Thank you, Mentor Africa, for watching, and thank you, Dex. I don't know if I pronounced your name well, and thank you for watching. Uh, if you're just tuning in, could you just share so that we invite more people to tune in, and also indicate your where you are. And it's important that I understand where many of you are tuning in. And thank you for tuning in this evening. And it's great having you guys. Just share so that we have many people to join in. And thank you. And my name is Funton Daniel, and I will be speaking here in the great state of Texas. Um, Thank you, Pekin, for joining us this evening. And if you just joining in, could you share so that many people can join in? And so we continue with these important deliberations about the Federal Republic of Ambazonian Territory. And also indicate where you are. If you are in United States, indicate where you are in the United States. If you know South America, indicate that you're in South America. If you are in Europe, indicate that you are in Europe. If you are in Russia, in Japan, China, wherever you are, could you just indicate where you are? And thank you for tuning in. And here again, my name is Funton Daniel. We'll be speaking here from the great state of Texas. And yes, and Pro, all right, thank you. And Wilson, thank you for tuning in. And I understand the frustration and the nightmare that is happening. And if you just tune in, could you share so that we can share so that we have many people tune in, and so we can proceed. And thank you again. And my name is Funton Daniel, and I will be speaking from the great state of Texas. And thank you again for tuning in this evening. Today, I am going to be talking that we are in a state of war. We are in a state of crisis. The Anglophone-speaking territory, the former British trusted territory. If you just tune in, could you share so that we have more people to tune in? I know it's impromptu. Many people were not aware of this, and thank you again for tuning in. And my name again is Funton Daniel, and we'll be speaking here in the great state of Texas about the ongoing crisis in the Anglophone speaking territory. and with the current name Federal Republic of Ambazonia. And thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us. And someone just joined in, probably from, I don't know if you're from Ground Zero or you're from La Republique. Just indicate and we understand, and thank you again. The topic that I will be discussing today is a request for congressional inquiries. Before I proceed, I want to take a moment to thank the United States Congress. And I want to take a moment again to thank the United States Congress. The United States Congress is the most powerful body here in the United States. And they are a very, very efficient Congress that decisions that affect fellow Americans are made in the United States Congress. And so Congress is what make the law body that write the laws of the United States. And I am deeply gratitude for the United States Congress. And with the recent resolutions drafted by the United States Congress and adopted and made available on the ongoing situation on the Anglophone speaking territory. And I also want to take the opportunity to thank the United States President. And I also want to take a moment to thank the U.S. Secretary of State, Tillerson. And I want to also take the moment again to thank the U.S. Permanent Representative to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. And I want to take another moment to thank U.S. Department of Defense. And I want to take a moment to thank the people of great state of Texas and the governor of this great state of Texas. And my discussion today, I am asking the United States Congress on the ongoing crisis that is inexplicably happening in the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. Before I proceed, the Federal Republic of Ambazonia was a British trusted territory. When the Germans were defeated, I know you guys keep listening why I still mention the same, because it is important to mention so that many people who are watching today for the first time should be able to understand where I am coming from. And those who are my frequent listeners, and they should be aware of why I always bring the idea that the Southern Cameroon, or the former British trusted territory, had an independence in 1961, and the United States voted in support of the sovereignty of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, or former West Cameroon, or Southern Cameroon. And with the ongoing brutality by the La Republique, it has come to the point that the people of the Southern Cameroon has chosen as declared itself unilaterally as a sovereign nation and separate from La Republique. The people of Southern Cameroon, or the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, or the former British trusted territory, was granted independence in 1961. And the United Nations does not have any legal binding. The United Nations, I'm sorry again, La République does not have any United Nations binding document that indicate that they control or they manage the Federal Republic of Ambazonia or the former West Cameroon or the former British trusted territory. So it was just a simple understanding between the two nations choosing to live together under a mutual agreement that does not give La République an ownership of the Southern Cameroon territory. That does not give the ownership of La République the sovereignty and control over the Southern Cameroon territory. And as I am speaking this evening, I am requesting a U.S. Congressional Inquiry into the sudden disappearance of member of the interim government. This member of the interim government have recently traveled to the United States several times. This member of the interim government of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia were having a deliberation meeting in Nigeria. And these deliberation meetings was taking place in a very transparent and open environment in Abuja in Nigeria. These leaders were debating the issues of humanitarian crisis related to the 40,000 Southern Cameroons that has been brutalized by La République and forcefully pushed out of their territory, and they're seeking a refuge in Nigeria. And these 40,000, many of them, including women and children, and women that are pregnant, and one even delivered a child and bleeding to death because of the brutality of La Republique du Cameroun against the Anglophone-speaking territory. Remember, it was a simple understanding between the Anglophone-speaking and La Republique. It wasn't a guarantee that La Republique has ownership and custodian over the Anglophone-speaking. And so the leaders of the Southern Cameroon, given the circumstances that the citizens has been brutalized by La Republique, the people has chosen an interim leaders, which they were presiding over a meeting in Abuja in Nigeria. The people were adopted by, we don't know exactly, but it is an indication that it was spearheaded by France and La République, given the negligence of the intelligence security of Nigeria, that there were some lapses and that they were abducted. And as now that I'm speaking here, we don't know exactly their location. We don't know if they have been killed. We don't know whether they are still alive. And no government has stepped out and declared exactly their location. La République yesterday, through the communication minister, said they are in Cameroon, but no images has been shown indicating that they have been in Cameroon. And I am here speaking here in the great state of United States. I am asking the United States Congressional Committee to set up an inquiry, to investigate and to indicate exactly where these Southern Cameroon are currently residing. Many people, many of the Southern Cameroon of the Anglophone expressions who are currently in the entire United States. And everyone is wondering, as you may have heard from Mark Barretta, who indicate that one person who was here in the United States, when the wife called him to ask, where are the leaders of the Anglophone speaking? He indicated that they are in Yaoundé. The husband was collapsed while in a hospital here in the United States. And she was shocked to learn that these leaders are in Yaoundé, according to the communication minister of La Republique Du Cameroun. And so I am asking the U.S. Congressional Committee to set up an investigation and find out exactly where these leaders are, because many of the Anglophone speaking in the entire continental here in the United States have had a sleepless night, and no one is aware exactly the truthfulness or where these leaders are. There is an unconfirmed report indicating by the United Nations representative in Nigeria, indicating that the leaders were arrested and that they saw them. But there's no images, there's no pictures, there's no photos, there's nothing to exactly to substantiate that the United Nations representative actually seen these leaders of the Anglophone speaking. The names, including the interim president, Seseko Ayo Tabe. Mr. Seseko Ayo Tabe is an interim government, our interim president of the Anglophone speaking territory. The people has been in desperate move to understand the exact location, and therefore I am asking this to the United States Congressional Committee to set up an inquiry immediately to investigate exactly the location of the people of the Southern Cameroon, because many of the people that are currently in the United States, no one is aware of their situation or their whereabouts. And Nigerian government hasn't stepped up and issued a clear statement exactly where these members of the interim government are. And I am asking the U.S. president as well to set up an inquiry to find out, investigate. And I'm also asking the U.S. State Department to send an investigative committee to know the exact location, and that this needs to be reported, because many of the Southern Cameroon of the Anglophone expressions are in desolate. They don't understand exactly where the interim leaders are located. Many are on assumption that they may have been killed by the joint military of the Nigerian government and La Republique Du Cameroun. But the exact nature of that allegation is not been certain, because no one exactly knows the truthfulness where these interim members of government are residing. And therefore, I am asking the U.S. Congress, I'm asking the U.S. Senate, I'm asking the U.S. President, that while many of us are working here, but we are in dismay and we are in desolate, asking all the kind help that the U.S. congressional leaders can provide, and help to set up an inquiry immediately and rapidly, so that an impromptu investigation to find out whether if these interim leaders either have been killed or they're still living. And the communication minister of La Republique, in a statement that declaring the people of the Anglophone speaking as a terrorist, this is an absurd for declaring a sovereign people of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, the sovereignty. La Republique has no authority over the territory of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. The people and the citizens has the sole custody and the duty to decide the destiny of the territory of the Southern Cameroon without any without any asking, any form of questioning from any Republic. And the communication minister made the statement, and this statement was in line with Francois Lefort, who is the United Nations representative to the Central African region. Francois Lefort is a United Nations representative to the Central African region. And when we have the crisis in Central African Republic, including the Anglophone speaking, the Anglophone speaking are not a secessionist. The Anglophone speaking is a sovereign nations that they have their independence equally like La Republique du Cameroun. Their independence was granted by the United Nations in 1961. And when the United Nations granted that decisions, that independence, the sovereignty of the Southern Cameroon, La Republique was not part of that document. When the Federal Republic of Ambazonia independence was granted, and when La Republique independence was granted, either all of the two nations were not part of those decisions of the United Nations. And when the United Nations representative that is being funded by the United States government and the United States taxpayers' money, and misuse of words and misguided using of languages inappropriate addressing a sovereign people is an absurd for the United Nations having such a representative that have no knowledge and skill to portray a sovereign people as a terrorist over their own sovereignty, over their national territory, is inappropriate, and therefore he should be terminated from his position and has that position be investigated, because the language La Republique using is just portraying that same language that was used by the United Nations scribe in the sub-Saharan region of Central African Republic. I am bringing this to the fellow American people because this information is not always used by the major media, because they have different issues they focus on. And that is why I am presenting this case straight to the American people, because I respect the United States sovereignty. I respect the United States government. I respect the United States Congress. I respect the United States Senate. And I respect the United States White House. And that is why I am presenting this case, because when La Republique Communication Minister using the word terrorist over the people of the Anglophone territory is an absolutely disgusting. When they use a word against the sovereignty of a people, it is difficult to understand whether he has a mental capability to use his knowledge and skill to be able to make good judgment in the United Nations body. And remember, United Nations Secretary General traveled to Africa. The purpose of his visit was to identify the nature and the problem that is rocking the Central African region, including the Southern Cameroon territory. And that United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, and remember, there were some representatives of the United Nations that were involved in bribery scandal, and the United Nations failed in absolutely either to investigate the crime of bribery, because that is the common practice in the West African region, including Paul Biya, the current government, that the president has been in power for close to 36 or 35 years as I'm speaking. The people has been undergoing excruciating military occupation And that is why I am bringing this case to the fellow American people. I am bringing this case to the United States government. That when Francois Lucien Ford misuse of appropriate word to describe the sovereignty of the people and misuse it, misguided word, because he's under the allowances and bribery, corruption of La Republique Du Cameroun. And this bribery is an ongoing process, including all the United Nations Secretary General. And that is why when he was asked and he ignored, instead he fired the person, the journalist that was carrying on that questioning. And I am asking U.S. Congressional Committee to set up an inquiry because the U.S. Congressional is unbiased. The U.S. Congressional Committee, I am asking to investigate the Southern Cameroon that has been arrested by La Republique. And we don't know whether the interim government officials has been killed or they're still breathing the natural air. Dear fellow Americans, fellow United States Congress, fellow citizens of the great state of Texas, I am asking that the U.S. Congress need to set up this investigational committee that will look into the leaders of the Southern Cameroon. They were physically here in the United States soil. They were here to listen to the people. They were here to understand the situation that is rocking the people of the Southern Cameroon. As I'm speaking here in the great state of Texas, that the people unjustifiably invaded the Southern Cameroon territory, and the people were arrested, some were even shot dead, simply because the Anglophone earlier in the beginning of last year as a setup, because many of the judicial system on the Anglophone territory, many of the healthcare system in the Anglophone territory, many of the entire institution of learning, including the educational system, were replaced by the Francophone. And the essence was to disbanding and abolishing the Anglo-Saxon education system, including the judicial system. And when the lawyers and the judicial system take on the street asking for a reform, instead of the government to inviting this Southern Cameroon, instead they resulted in extrajudicial execution and trampling upon this higher level citizens asking for a reform. When the Southern Cameroon in the diaspora acknowledged this extrajudicial behavior of La Republique, and they have to wage a support for the entire sovereignty of the Southern Cameroon. And I am asking the U.S. Congress, I am asking the U.S. Senate, and I am asking the U.S. government to set up an inquiry to investigate the Southern Cameroon territory, because the people here in the United States are not exactly aware of where the leaders are currently is. They may have been killed. They may have been, because information reaching us unverifiably indicate that the joint military of the Republique Du Cameroun and the Nigerian government has executed the interim leaders, and they have not in any form shown any images, despite the fact that there is lawyers and high caliber lawyers, including the West African Bar Association, the African Bar Association, the British Bar Association, the German Bar Association, or the African Bar Association in Germany, including United States, have set up an inquiry, and they don't know exactly where about the leaders of the interim government of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. So we have the trust of the United States Congress. We have the belief that the United States Congress can do something. And we're asking that if this inquiry needs to be set up, it needs to be set up right now and how, so that if they are still alive, then we should know where they are about. And if they are dead, then we need to understand and that the sovereignty of the Southern Cameroon territory is no longer negotiable. And we're asking the United Nations to immediately, unconditionally set up an inquiry to find out where the Southern Cameroon leaders are. Because if the United Nations has acted swiftly, immediately, and promptly, then we have not arrived in this situation where we are looking where the leaders are. I am asking the fellow American, I am asking the fellow United States Congress that the leaders are missing. And there is no way we can find out whether there are images of pictures or anything. La Republique Communication Minister just sent a communique, but without any images indicating that they are actually physically in Yaoundé. I am asking United States Congress, I am asking fellow Americans that the people of the Anglophone speaking, the former British trusted territory, they were mandated by the United Nations, that the British prepared this nation for their immediate independence. But the British administrator at the time advised that they should be waiting for it, prepare them. But the people of the Southern Cameroon exhibit sovereign democracy when an elected official transfer power from an elected official to the next unelected official. They practice a sound democracy where power was transferred. There was no war. There was no injustice. It was respected. And yet, La Republique, that claim over the sovereignty of the Southern Cameroon, has never in any form exercised any sound democracy. They have never elected an official transfer of power from an elected government to another elected government. It has been from one dictatorship to the next dictatorship. And that is the spirit of La Republique. And yet, the people of Anglophones has exercised a sovereign democracy where leadership were transferred, despite the fact that they asked that they should live with La Republique under a federal structure of government. But La Republique has never in entire past 56 years exercised those duties where an elected official has transferred power from one elected official to the next. We have a brutal dictatorship of Paul Biya that has been in power for close to 35, getting to 36 years, without any transfer of power from an elected of government. And yet we have a brutal military system that lack of mental reasoning, lack of mental challenge, and have been sent to execute innocent Federal Republic of Ambazonian territory. Mothers and children are being executed overnight against the will of the people. And yet I am presenting this case to the fellow United States government because I understand the value and the justice system of the United States government. While we're waiting for the sovereign, while we're waiting for the Congressional Inquiry into investigating these ongoing citizens of the leadership of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, I am asking any appointed officials of La Republique that are currently residing in the Southern Cameroon territory, we are asking them to leave within immediately, because we shall take them as matter arises. And that if you have been appointed by La Republique and you are currently residing in the Southern Cameroon territory, if you are a divisional officer, if you are a government, whoever they have been appointed, and that the Republic of La Republique has appointed you, and you are currently residing in the Southern Cameroon territory, we are asking you to immediately and unconditionally, either you resign and follow the Southern Cameroon rules and regulations, or you leave the Southern Cameroon territory and relocate back to La Republique, because the time has come when we shall handle it personally. Fellow Southern Cameroon, fellow Ambazonian, I understand you guys, I understand that many people take this for granted. Time has come that the sovereignty of the Southern Cameroon shall prevail, and that the people shall rise and overcome their enemy and go over where they are and search for where they are and right into their dung yard, and that they shall be dealt with immediately and effectively. Another, if you are an Anglophone, if you are an Anglophone, if you are Southern Cameroon, if you are West Cameroon, and you are currently serving in La Republique, and you are serving in the La Republique military, you are serving in La Republique military, we are asking you to relocate back to the Southern Cameroon territory, and we shall form a defensive alliance, and we shall head onward and forward and swiftly and immediately to La Republique, and we must face them squarely, and we must defend our territory, and we must rise as one sovereign people, sovereign nations, and protect our sovereignty against the evil of La Republique. And we shall not take an answer yes for yes, no for no, but we must overcome our enemy, and we must take them to the right to where they are, and our sovereignty shall never be negotiable. While we wait for the United States Congressional investigations, I am asking fellow Americans that our people are being destroyed. Our homes are being destroyed. Our property have been destroyed. And our resources has been removed and carried on to develop La Republique. And our territory remain the worst environment when people cannot find food, when mother property have been destroyed, when mother food are being damaging by the evil force of La Republique. And yet, the Nigerian government, led by Buhari, is not even aware of the situation and the magnitude of this crisis. I am asking United States Congress to set up immediately an unconditional investigation of La Republique, and that how people are in desolate need of the sovereignty to be respected. And this is Fontaine Daniel. I am speaking here from the great state of Texas. It is imperative that the United States government act now, swiftly, immediately, and without waiting, because the problems has reached a point where it might go to escalate to other crises. I understand that United States government is the government that I respect. It's the government that everyone will want to admire. It is government of the people, the government that stands for ensure that peace and security maintained around the world. But has been the people of Ambazonia, the people of the sovereign, the people of the Ambazonian, the Anglophones speaking, are in desperate need of an answer. They're in desperate need of a solution. And that is why I am asking the United States government to set up immediately and swiftly an investigation committee where the leaders of the Anglophones speaking are, because we are not aware where they are. And the United Nations representative in Nigeria couldn't say they met them, but there's no evidence to substantiate, and there's no evidence to show that they are physically alive or they are dead. And La Republique is using the language that was orchestrated by the United Nations representative in the West African region, Central African region, Francois Lucien Lefort. And I am very disappointed when the United Nations appoint someone that has a mental and understanding of the history of the region in which he's been appointed. Because when a United Nations scribe using words without knowledge and skill and understanding, and then I am concerned of having someone with mentally challenge to lead an important organization such as the United Nations. I am asking the United States to investigate whether he used the judgment with sound knowledge or he was being persuaded by La Republique, or he was being persuaded by bribery that has been rocking the United Nations body. And I am asking United States Congress, I am asking United States Senate to investigate immediately. And I am thanking you for watching. And I will continue to bring you more details as information arises. And it was Fontaine Daniel speaking here from the great state of Texas, here in the United States. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.